Have you ever experienced the ultimate fishing heartbreak? You find a magic spot on a Tuesday, every single cast is a strike. You pull out massive fish all afternoon. You go home feeling like an absolute professional. Then, you wake up the very next day, rush back to the exact same honey hole, throw the exact same bait, and catch absolutely nothing. Zero. Just hours of dead silence. It makes zero sense, right? How can a spot full of hungry fish turn into a complete ghost town overnight? I am going to promise you right now, by the end of this video, you will discover the shocking truth about why this happens. We are going to reveal the massive biological reason why fishing the same spot 2 days in a row almost guarantees failure. I want you to drop a comment below before we even start. What is the longest you have ever stubbornly fished a dead honey hole before finally giving up and moving? This topic is incredibly important because it traps almost every single fisherman on the planet. We all have that one lucky spot. We are deeply conditioned by the old grandpa rules of fishing. The old-timers taught us that if you find where the fish live, you guard that spot with your life and you fish it until your arms fall off. Because of this deeply ingrained habit, guys will literally spend years going to the exact same bridge piling or the exact same sunken log, throwing the same lure. We do it because human beings love comfort, and we love repeating past success. We want to believe that the fish are just sitting down there waiting for us to serve them breakfast every morning. But the underwater world does not work like a drive-through restaurant. When we stubbornly refuse to adapt, we end up wasting our most valuable time on the water. It is time to break that old cycle and understand what is really happening beneath the surface. Let us talk about the morning illusion that traps so many fishermen. You wake up before the sun even thinks about rising. You pour a cup of that harsh, bitter coffee from your old thermos. You pack your gear and head straight down to the exact same spot where you absolutely crushed them yesterday. In your mind, you are already planning how you will carry the heavy stringer back to the truck. You step up to the bank, make that first confident cast, and wait for the aggressive strike. But nothing happens. The water is completely dead. You wait 10 minutes, then 20 minutes, then an hour. The silence is deafening. Why does this happen? Because you educated every single fish in that area yesterday. When you yanked their buddies out of the water, you shattered their sense of security. They are not sitting there waiting to make the same mistake twice. They are surviving. This morning illusion is the exact reason why you go home empty-handed on day 2. You are expecting yesterday to repeat itself, but the underwater world has completely changed. It is time we talk about fishing pressure and what it really means for your favorite fishing hole. Every single time your lure hits the water, it makes a sound. When you hooked that massive trophy yesterday, you did not just catch a fish, you caused a massive underwater panic. Imagine being in a quiet room and suddenly a loud alarm goes off while someone is dragged out the door. That is what the fish experienced. They communicate danger to each other through erratic movements and vibrations in the water column. When you spent 4 hours casting, splashing, and fighting fish yesterday, you essentially put up a giant neon sign that says, "Danger Zone." The fish that avoided your hook learned a valuable lesson. They know that the splashing sound on the surface is not a wounded baitfish anymore. They know it is a trap. So when you show up the next morning and throw the exact same lure, making the exact same splash, they scatter. They do not bite because their survival instincts are screaming at them to stay away from the noise. Let us dive into the science of fear beneath the surface. This is something the old-timers rarely talk about. When a fish is fighting for its life on the end of your line, it experiences extreme stress. During this struggle, it actually releases chemical signals into the water. These are called alarm pheromones. It is their natural way of warning the rest of the school that a predator is attacking. Yesterday you fought 10 or 15 fish in that one small cove. You essentially flooded the entire area with the scent of pure panic. That chemical signal does not just vanish when you pack up and drive home. It lingers in the water. It coats the rocks, the weeds, and the mud. The other fish smell it all night long. They stay on high alert. So when you come back the next day, you are casting into a zone that still smells like a crime scene to them. They are nervous. They are hiding tight to cover. And they have absolutely zero interest in eating whatever you are offering. You cannot trick a fish that is terrified for its life. You also have to think about visual cues and shadows that you leave behind. Picture this scene. You stood on the bank yesterday, wearing your favorite lucky red shirt. The sun was at your back, casting a long, dark shadow right over the strike zone. To you, it was just a beautiful day outside. To the fish, that shadow became associated with sudden danger. Every time that shadow moved, a fish disappeared into the sky. Fish have incredible vision when it comes to detecting threats from above. The surviving fish in that hole now have a memory locked in their tiny brains. Dark shadow on the water equals death. When you return the next day, stand in the exact same spot, and cast the exact same shadow, you trigger that traumatic memory. They see you before your lure even hits the water. You might think you are being stealthy, but to them, you are a giant, obvious predator returning to the hunting ground. Unless you completely change your approach angle, you are just waving a red flag at a bull that already knows the trick. Here is a harsh truth about how schools of fish operate. In every group, there are the alpha biters. These are the most aggressive, hungry, and competitive fish in the pack. They are the ones who rush out to smash your lure before the others even get a chance to look at it. Yesterday, you had the time of your life catching them. But think about what you actually did. You systematically removed every single aggressive, willing biter from that location. You literally caught all the dumb ones. What is left behind? The smart, shy, cautious, and lazy fish. The ones that watch their aggressive buddies get hauled away. These remaining fish are the hardest ones to catch on any given day. They inspect the bait longer. They are easily spooked. They require perfect finesse and a completely different presentation. So when you show up on day 2, expecting the same fast and furious action, you are setting yourself up for failure. The easy targets are gone, and you are trying to play checkers with fish that are now playing chess. We need to break down the biggest myth in the entire fishing world, the myth of the permanent honey hole. Your grandpa probably told you that if you find a spot with fish, you guard it with your life and fish it forever. But fish are not rocks. They do not just sit in one spot for their entire lives waiting for you to feed them. They are living, breathing creatures that react to their environment. When you go into a spot and rip out the leaders of the food chain, you disrupt the entire local ecosystem. The hierarchy is broken. The school feels vulnerable without its biggest members. As a result, they do not just hunker down. They often pack up and leave. They scatter to find a safer feeding ground where the pressure is lower. By returning to the exact same spot, you are essentially knocking on the door of an empty house. The residents have moved out. Sticking to the grandpa rules might feel comforting, but it is the fastest way to waste a perfectly good morning on the water. You have to accept that fish have tails, and they use them. Let us paint a clear picture of what happens with your tackle. You tie on your absolute favorite crankbait, the one with the green back and the loud rattles inside. Yesterday, they absolutely annihilated this thing. You were feeling like a professional tournament angler. Today, you cast it out, crank it down, and it swims right past their noses. Nothing, not even a follow. Why? Because they recognize the specific vibration and sound profile of that lure. Fish rely heavily on their lateral lines to feel movement in the water. Yesterday, that rattling sound meant an easy meal. Today, it means extreme danger. They have connected the dots. You are now fishing for educated targets with a weapon they have already figured out. It is like trying to sell the same bad used car to the same guy twice in 1 week. He is not going to buy it. If you stubbornly refuse to change your lure, you are guaranteeing your own failure. You must offer them something they have not heard or felt before if you want to trigger a reactionary strike on day 2. Now let us talk about the noise you make before you even make your first cast. If you are fishing from a boat, think about the process. You slowly motor into the cove. You drop that heavy metal anchor over the side. It hits the bottom with a massive thud that sends shockwaves through the entire water column. Yesterday, the fish might have tolerated it or brushed it off as a random natural sound. But today, doing it again is like sounding a burglar alarm in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The fish remember what happened after that loud thud yesterday. Their buddies vanished. So the moment your anchor hits the bottom on day 2, the bite shuts off instantly. Even if you use a quiet trolling motor or a shallow water anchor, the hum and vibration are still registered by the fish. They know you have returned. You have announced your presence long before your bait ever touches the water. If you want to fish the same general area, you have to approach it with absolute silence, and preferably from a completely different direction. There is a massive misconception among weekend anglers that a single night of sleep resets a fish. Many guys truly believe that once the sun goes down, the fish suffer from temporary amnesia. They think the water hits a magic reset button, and by dawn, everything is back to normal. This is completely false. Scientific studies on fish behavior, especially with popular game species like bass and walleye, prove otherwise. These studies show that fish can remember negative encounters for days, and sometimes even weeks. They possess a survival memory. If they got pricked by a hook or saw a massive disturbance, they do not just forget about it because the moon came out. Their survival depends on remembering threats. When you bank on the overnight reset theory, you are ignoring basic biology. You are fishing against science. The next time you convince yourself that the fish will have forgotten about your epic battle from yesterday, remember that they are wired to hold a grudge. They will stay highly suspicious for a very long time. Think closely about the specific bait you used and left behind. Let us say you were using live night crawlers yesterday. You had a great time, and before you left, you tossed your leftover worms into the water. You probably thought you were giving them a free meal and keeping them around for tomorrow. But what you actually did was train them. They ate those free worms without getting yanked into the sky. Now, they are looking for worms that behave naturally, drifting perfectly with the current. When you show up today and cast a worm that is impaled on a metal hook, tied to a thick fishing line, dragging unnaturally against the current, they notice the difference immediately. You taught them what a safe meal looks like yesterday, and today you are presenting them with an obvious fake. You literally educated them on how to avoid your hook. If you insist on fishing the same spot, you absolutely must change the menu. If they saw worms yesterday, give them minnows today. Never show them the exact same trick twice in a row. We also fall into the trap of ignoring the subtle weather shifts. You pull up to the lake on day 2 and look around. The sun is shining, the trees look the same, so you assume the conditions are identical to yesterday. But you are not paying attention to the invisible factors. The barometric pressure might have dropped just a tiny fraction overnight. The wind might have shifted exactly 10 degrees to the east. The water temperature could have cooled down by just 2 degrees. To you, it feels like the exact same beautiful morning. To the fish, the entire world has shifted. These tiny environmental changes dictate their movement. Because of that slight wind shift, the bait fish moved deeper. And because the bait fish moved, the big predator fish followed them. You are standing there stubbornly casting into the shallows, expecting a repeat of yesterday, completely unaware that the fish simply relocated. You are fishing memories instead of fishing the current conditions. You have to adapt to the water as it is today, not how it was yesterday. Everyone knows the frustration of the phantom bite. You sit there in your favorite chair for 3 solid hours. The water is totally quiet. The birds are singing, but the fish are completely silent. Finally, your bobber twitches. You get one tiny nibble. You get excited, you rear back and set the hook with all your might, and you completely miss. You reel in an empty hook. That was it. That was your one and only chance for the entire morning. Why did it happen like that? Because the fish was just testing the bait. It was suspicious. It did not aggressively inhale the lure like they did yesterday. It simply mouthed the tail to see if it felt right. When it felt the resistance of your line, it let go instantly. This is the hallmark of a highly pressured, educated fish. They will investigate, but they will not commit. When you fish a spot 2 days in a row, you are going to encounter a lot of these phantom bites. It is incredibly frustrating, and it is a clear sign that you have worn out your welcome in that specific location. You must also consider how the entire food chain reacts to your presence. Yesterday, you stomped around the shallows like a giant. You splashed the water, you dragged fish through the weeds, and you made a massive commotion. Think about what that did to the smaller creatures. You completely terrified the minnows, the frogs, and the crawfish. They fled the area looking for thicker cover and safety. Now, apply simple logic. The big game fish are only in that spot because the food is there. If your actions yesterday scared away all the bait fish, Why would the big predator fish stick around? They are not going to wait in an empty diner, hoping the chef comes back. They follow the food. When you return on day 2, you are fishing in a barren wasteland. The prey has moved on, and the predators followed right behind them. To find the fish again, you have to find where the bait went. Do not waste your time casting into a kitchen that has absolutely zero food left in the pantry. Move on and find the active life. This brings us to a fundamental economic principle that applies perfectly to fishing, the law of diminishing returns. It is a very simple rule. The more time and effort you put into one tiny specific square of water, the less reward you get back for your trouble. The first hour on a fresh spot is always the most productive. You catch the eager ones. The second hour is tougher. By the time you come back for a second, completely full day, your return on investment is practically zero. You are basically standing on the bank, casting into a ghost town, and expecting a grand parade to march by. It makes absolutely no sense. Professional anglers understand this rule perfectly. They know exactly when a spot has dried up. They do not stay and force the issue. They accept that the peak moment has passed, and they move on to greener pastures. You have to learn to let go of the emotional attachment to yesterday's success. Accept the diminishing returns and start investing your casts in a location that actually has willing participants. So what exactly should you do instead of stubbornly beating dead water? You need to move. It sounds simple, but it is the hardest thing for a fisherman to do. Just picking up your gear and walking 50 yards down the bank can make a world of difference. You want to find the fish that did not hear the massive commotion yesterday. You are looking for the uneducated fish, the ones that have not been exposed to your lures, your shadows, and your heavy footsteps. When you move down the shoreline or motor to the next point, you are presenting your bait to a fresh audience. These fish are relaxed. They are in their natural feeding mode, completely unaware of the massacre that happened just around the corner yesterday. By simply relocating a short distance, you completely reset the odds in your favor. You leave the stressed, paranoid fish alone, and you target the willing biters. It is the most effective way to turn a frustrating, fishless morning into another highly successful day on the water. The rotation strategy is the ultimate secret weapon of the guys who consistently catch fish day after day. Professional tournament anglers almost never pound the exact same spot 2 days in a row. Even if they caught a massive limit there, they build a rotation. They fish a spot, catch a few good ones, and then they leave while the fish are still biting. They give that spot a rest. They allow the fish to calm down. They wait for the alarm pheromones to wash away with the natural current. They let the bait fish return to the shallows. By doing this, they ensure that when they come back to that spot on day 3 or day 4, the fish have actually reset. The ecosystem has balanced itself out again. If you want to master your local lake or river, you need to have 3 or 4 solid spots that you can rotate through. Do not exhaust your number 1 hole. Treat it like a precious resource. Fish it, leave it, let it heal, and then return to claim your reward later. Patience and strategic rotation will beat stubborn repetition every single time. Imagine walking down to the local dock and talking to that one stubborn regular who is always there. You know the guy. He sits on the exact same bucket, casts to the exact same bridge piling, and uses the exact same bait every single day. He will confidently tell you that he caught a monster there 3 years ago. But if you look inside his bucket today, it is completely empty. He is trapped in a cycle of stubbornness. Do not be that guy. Fishing is an art of adaptation. The water is dynamic, and the fish are constantly adapting to survive. If you refuse to change, you are going to get left behind with an empty bucket. Be the angler who explores new water, the one who pushes past the comfortable boundaries and finds the hidden spots that nobody else is pressuring. When you break free from the habit of fishing memories, you open yourself up to discovering entirely new patterns. The best spot on the lake might be just around the next bend, but you will never know if you refuse to leave your familiar, dead water. Now, what if you absolutely must fish the same spot? Maybe you do not have a boat, or the bank access is extremely limited. If you are forced to return to the scene of yesterday's crime, you must completely change your presentation. You cannot throw the same loud, aggressive lure. You need to go to the opposite extreme. If you used a loud spinnerbait yesterday, you need to tie on a silent, natural-colored plastic worm today. You need to downsize your line, use a smaller hook, creep up to the bank softly, staying low to avoid casting a shadow, cast beyond the fish, and slowly work the bait into their zone, rather than splashing it right on top of their heads. You have to treat these fish like they are the most paranoid creatures on Earth, because right now, they are. Finesse is your only hope. By offering them a tiny, non-threatening meal that behaves completely differently than yesterday's noisy trap, you might just trick one or two cautious fish into making a mistake. But it takes extreme patience and a flawless, delicate presentation. Another major factor you can manipulate is the time of day. If you fished that magic spot at the crack of dawn yesterday, do not go back at dawn today. Wait until the afternoon, or better yet, try it right at dusk. By changing the time of day, you are completely changing the lighting conditions in the water. The shadows fall differently, the water temperature has changed. The sun glare on the surface looks different to the fish looking up. This shift in the environment might just be enough to trick their memory. A lure that looked terrifying in the bright morning sun might look like a vulnerable, easy snack in the fading light of evening. You are essentially presenting a familiar puzzle in a completely new light. The fish rely heavily on their vision and routine. By breaking that routine and showing up when they least expect it, you can sometimes trigger a feeding window that was shut tight during your normal morning hours. Use the changing sun to your advantage and catch them completely off guard. You have to remember that predator fish are opportunistic hunters. When you change the schedule, you force them to react purely on instinct rather than the fresh memory of your previous visit. Ultimately, to become a truly great angler, you have to break the old grandpa rules. It is incredibly hard to leave a spot where you had massive success. It goes against all of our human nature. Our brains are wired to repeat actions that brought us a reward. But fishing is a game of outsmarting a wild creature in its own element. To outsmart the fish, you first have to outsmart your own deeply ingrained habits. You have to recognize when a spot is dead, silence your ego, and keep moving. The water is vast, and there are thousands of hungry fish out there waiting for a bait. Stop punishing yourself by staring at a motionless bobber in a pressured zone. Embrace the challenge of the hunt. Pack up your gear, read the water, and trust your instincts to find a fresh bite. The moment you stop relying on yesterday's glory and start fishing for today's reality, you will see a massive improvement in your success rate. Stop doing the same thing over and over, and start fishing with a completely clear and strategic mind. So let us bring it all together. The biggest takeaway here is the unexpected reality of how fish react to danger. It is not just about you catching a few fish. It is the massive panic, the alarm pheromones, and the education of the surviving school that completely ruins your chances for day 2. This is the big twist that old-school fishing myths completely ignore. Fish do not reset overnight. They learn, they adapt, and they remember. When you let go of your ego and finally stop beating dead water just because it worked yesterday, you completely change your approach to fishing. You become a hunter instead of a hopeful waiter. Thank you so much for watching and for hanging out with us today. If this video changed the way you look at your favorite fishing spot, please hit that subscribe button right now. Give the video a big thumbs up to support the channel. And drop a comment below. I really want to know, what is the longest you have ever sat at a dead honey hole before you finally realized the fish were gone?